Hi everyone, welcome to Cheese Happy Hour. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes to get started and have everybody log in. But if you are here and ready to roll, just say hi on the chat function. If you are viewing us from Facebook, welcome. If you're viewing us from LinkedIn, welcome. You can also go to the website, which is www.cheesetothepeople.com, and you can go to the Cheesy Sphere and Cheese Happy Hours. You can watch that live from the website as well, and then you can do the chat function through there as well. So, hi, Michael. And great, we have some folks logging in right now. I hope everybody is ready for a wonderful evening of not Brie's, other soft cheeses. So giving it a couple more minutes again. If you are just joining us live across the country, I have people from the West Coast this time. Please feel free to say hi on the chat function. Would love to know who's on with us today and enjoying everything. Again, if you did a little board for yourself, which I hope you did, I hope you're kind of getting into it and starting to put things on the boards that you want to snack on apart from the cheese. Of course, we want the cheese on there, but you're getting the accompaniment to go along with it in your box, and we want you to start kind of branching out there and starting to explore textures and flavors that go with cheese. This one's a really fun one because you can do a lot of crunchy things with it and have something. So if you need, hi Girja, if you need a couple minutes to pull some things out of your pantry that you think are going to go great with the cheese, do it. Put it on your board, put it on your plate, take a photo of it and send it to me, and I will go ahead and put it on Instagram. Also, you can feel free, let people know what you're doing. Put it on your own Instagram or your own Twitter account. And I'm not on Twitter. I'm not that interesting. But I am on Instagram, so feel free to go ahead and tag me. Just do a hashtag Cheese to the People, and I'll be acknowledged. I'll know that you did something for me. So hi Andrew and Corey. Hi Bob and Deb. Welcome. Gorgeous day to be outside. I was planning on doing this from a rooftop today with a beautiful view. But I was a little worried about having another technical issue with the live stream and the video quality. So we're keeping it super safe today, given our past history, and people who have been on these calls know what that is. Hopefully we're moving past some of those technical issues, and we're gonna kind of have a couple of times with just smooth. I like smooth. All right, so welcome everyone. Again, if you have just joined us, please let us know that you're here, and through the chat function on the website, again, www.cheesetothepeople.com. You want to go to the Cheesy Sphere and then down to Cheese Happy Hours, and you'll see the screen has a request for email. You can just bypass it by hitting that little button up at the top of the screen if you don't want to provide your email. I totally understand. But if you do your email, I'd love to hear from you, because then I can let you know about upcoming things. Anyways, welcome everyone. My name is Kristen Evans. I am currently the only member of Cheese to the People, but hopefully that's going to be changing soon. Hopefully I'm addressing that and getting some more folks involved. Hi, Scott. Welcome. So we have some really gorgeous cheeses today. We are doing all softies, if you can believe it. All soft cheeses. I'm going to lift up my board. I'm going to move my knife out of the way so that you can kind of see what... Hi, Doreen and Mark. Welcome. All right, I'm going to see if this comes up into view. I'm not going to tip it over too much, but I went to the Bread and Water Company today over in Pentagon Row for some coffee. this morning, and as I was running errands, and I picked up a croissant because I felt like a croissant for tonight was really, really appropriate as a bread option. So I had a little fun with this. For those of you who are new to Cheese Happy Hour, I am Kristen. I not just am the founder of Cheese to the People, but I am actually a sommelier here in Washington, D.C. at a restaurant here in D.C. And I have trained and worked as a cheesemonger for years and years and years before coming back to DC. I did actually work as a cheesemonger here for like a second, and then I ended up managing a bunch of places and becoming a sommelier. So Cheese to the People is me getting back into cheese in hopefully a really cool way, using technology to teach people about cheese and to promote really awesome things. All of the cheeses that you see tonight, if you go to the cheese files, you'll see profiles for each one of them. Most of them are under the silky smooth category. I can't imagine why. They're all luscious. So we're gonna get right into it now. First cheese on the docket tonight is called Delice Malsire, which is a triple cream cheese. And I know that you folks have had triple cream cheeses before. Delice de Bourgogne is a huge one. Brie Savarin, things like that. This is along the same lines, and I'm sorry, somebody's trying to text me, and I'm not sure why. Give me a second. Okay, and so Delice Malsire is actually made, it's called a private label cheese. It is made by one producer for a distributor named Fromy, and it is actually made in the Haute-Marne region of France, which is kind of up above the Rhone Valley and just neighboring Burgundy. So it's in like kind of this awkward spot right now in our history. For the time being, and is everybody on the website? I just want to make sure, is everyone on the website? Yeah. Go ahead and chat with me and make sure, are you viewing me from the website? Are you viewing me from Facebook? I would love to know. Right. Somebody got stuck on that front page of the okay, great. Yeah, everybody's watching through the website. Great, fabulous. Somebody got stuck there, and they were texting me trying to figure out how to bypass that. So technology is hard sometime. Okay, great. So they're in. Hi, I think that was my sister actually. Hi, my sister and my mom. You'll see Girja on the line. You know Girja. Anyways, welcome. Hi, Tara. Hi, Spence. Lovely to see you here. I appreciate you coming. We're going back to talking about Delice Malsire. So it's from the Haute-Marne region of France, which is kind of next to the Rhone, kind of next to Burgundy. It was originally actually a wine growing area. And what happened is the later part of the 19th century, a pestilence called phylloxera hit those vineyards. So phylloxera is actually, sorry, world, we are responsible for phylloxera. It comes from Virginia. It actually came from the vineyards in Charlottesville, Thomas Jefferson's famous vineyards. And what happened was that some of the vine material grown here in Virginia was brought to France from the University of Bordeaux. And on those vines was a little tiny insect that looks a lot like an aphid. It is not an aphid. It looks like it. And that aphid carries a mold, actually, and the mold is what causes the problems, and it attacks the roots of the grapevines and causes those vines to collapse eventually. And that's basically what happened throughout Europe. So last time, if you joined us, we talked about what happened in Spain for a commune of folks. This is exactly what happened in this town in the Haute-Marne region called Chevillon. And Chevillon is tiny. I mean, we're talking like 1,300 people live in this little village where this cheese is made. And they actually were not as famous a region as Burgundy, as the Rhone Valley, as Bordeaux. And so those farmers who were growing grapevines couldn't afford to replant after the pestilence hit their vines and caused them to collapse. Because the way that they figured out eventually, it took some time, but they eventually figured out that if you basically take an American grapevine rootstock and then you splice the European rootstock onto the top of it, they'll bond together, they'll grow together as one plant, and they will thrive because the American grapes had created an immunity to this mold that this little tiny bug carries. And so American grapevines were not affected at all by phylloxera. But if you've ever had an American grape, you will know that American grapes do not make the best wine. It's actually pretty gross. So you cannot make wine really out of American grapes. You can eat them and they're delightful to eat, but they're not very good for wine. And so this is how they figured out how to save European grapes. And that's exactly what happens for most of the world now, is that Vinus vinifera, which are the European grapevines, are spliced on top of American rootstock. And that is how we have wine today. Anyway, so the farmers in Chevillon could not afford to replant their vineyards, and so they had to find other things to do, types of agriculture. And so it also happens that this is a part of France that is really, really good at making cheese. And actually, there's a couple of cheeses that come from this region that everybody knows. Brie, which we will actually be enjoying in a couple of happy hours from now. And then also a cheese called Langres. If you've ever been to the homepage of my website, you will have seen Langres. Langres is the cheese tower that is on the homepage of my website, and it is traditionally served with champagne. And I just happen to have a sparkling wine here today. Oh, hold on, we're going to show you the label. We're going to talk about this in a minute. I think we should just do a little cheersies. First of all, happy Tuesday, everyone. Happy Cheese Happy Hour. Welcome. I'm doing a Cremant de Jura, and I'll talk to you about why that is in a minute. But for the time being, let's go back to Chevillon, and I'm actually going to pull up a picture of Chevillon. So I'm actually going to show you first the Haute-Marne region of France. And if you can see on here, you'll see Langres towards the bottom of your screen, and then a bunch of, this is an old map, obviously, but this is Marne. It's, pretty cool little spot. And then I'm going to show you right now the chateau that the little village of Chevillon is named after. It's not exactly one of the largest chateaux in the world. It's a pretty minor one, but it's quite pretty. And that is the name. That's the chateau that was the village was named after. But this particular producer is actually a little bit more well-known for their Brie de Meaux rather than their other cheeses. And their name is literally Fromager de Chevillon, which basically means the cheesemakers of Chevillon. I mean, we're talking about a little town, so you can see how they're not exactly creative with their names. So Délice Malsiré, which means delicacy of the sire, or the king, was actually the brainchild of Fromy. Fromy is a company, and we'll get more into the history a little bit later because two of the cheeses tonight are from Fromy. They are basically a distributor and marketing company of cheeses. They started as an export-import company strictly for cheese, but they've expanded out to other products that are cheese-related now. But almost from the very beginning of their founding, they actually started collaborating with small cheesemakers throughout France to produce cheeses that are really good ambassadors of the styles of cheese that that the French love. And so this particular producer has been making Brie de Meaux for the American market. And by the American market, I really mean the American market because we are the market where they must pasteurize cheese. It's us and the Australians that really require younger cheeses like this one to be made out of pasteurized milk. Other parts of the world, including most of Europe, you don't have to. It's all raw milk. So triple cream cheeses actually originated from Normandy. And this actually happened not as far back as you would imagine. For a long time, since the 18th century, we've had Brie. Brie was created in, I would say, around the 1750s, just outside of Paris, actually, alongside Camembert. Then you have to fast forward 100 years to get double creams. Double creams and triple creams are called cheeses of affluence, and that's because typically when you're making a cheese, you actually take the cream off the top of the milk that you have just received from your animals, and you use that milk to make other things like butter. And then you use the milk to make the cheese. In this instance, with the double creams, they actually keep that cream layer on top of the milk, and they make a full cream cheese, and then they add extra cream to the vat, so it doubles the amount of butterfat that's in that particular cheese. With triple creams, which were invented in 1925, in Normandy, you actually add even more cream to the top of the cheese, to the top of the milk, and that increases the butterfat content to 75%. Now, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, I am literally eating a cheese that is 75% butterfat. No. What we're talking about is 75% of the milk solids that are in that cheese. Soft cheeses like this are about 50% water and then 50% solids. The solids are pretty much protein and fat. So 75% of the solid content, which is only half of the cheese, that's butterfat. And that is what gives it this super luscious, almost buttery, like it almost sometimes tastes like you're eating butter. That's what that's from. This one is coming off more like a creme fraiche, which is really, really, really lovely. It's kind of one of those cheeses with the perfect amount of tang where you can do it with something like a dried apricot. Now, I'm going to show you this apricot, and you're going to think to yourself, Kristen, why is your apricot brown? And it's because I actually bought unsulfured apricots to show you what an unsulfured product looks like. If you're getting those bright, beautiful, kind of orangey apricots from the store, it's because they have a lot of sulfur in it. This is actually an organic product that is unsulfured. It's still tasty. It just doesn't have the sulfur and therefore the bright color. Great with apricots, great with cherries, which you got in your box today, and then beautiful with nuts. So pistachios, I love pecans, so I put pecans on my plate today. It's also really great with croissant. I went ahead and did a croissant. And where did you're just asking where I got my unsulfured apricots. I got my unsulfured apricots. You can get them at the organic stores for sure. My secret is, first of all, I do believe, Scott, you have apricots at Arrowwine, but you can also go to TJ Maxx or Home Goods. They always have some really interesting little accompaniments. And if you're scared of trying something new and you don't want to spend a ton of money on it, just to try it out, go to TJ Maxx or to Home Goods and pick it up for a little bit less expensive. And then once you decide you really like it, go for the good stuff with Scott over at Arrowwine. Anyways, so I went ahead and did a little croissant action. Like I said earlier, I went over to Bread and Water Company over in Pentagon Row for some coffee this morning, saw the croissants, thought to myself, hey, I'm doing soft cheeses today. I might as well get myself a little croissant and do a little triple cream action on top of that. So with your boards, do what you want to snack on. If you know that you're going to be picking up a box from Scott later on in the day and you're feeling like doing a little baguette, pick up some bread. Use it as an opportunity to expand your pantry. All right. So, triple cream started in Burgundy or in Normandy, and they were really made for the super affluent folks in the 1920s who could afford really expensive cheeses because you had a lot of cream added to it. Super decadent time, super decadent cheese. It kind of makes sense culturally that it happened right then. It was also, France, Paris at the time, blowing up. You have all of these artists and musicians and writers. They're all in Paris. And so it made a lot of sense to have some really super decadent things that are going to go beautifully with the lifestyle that's being led. So, anyway, so this is, again, a creation done for the American market here in terms of the Delisle Ciré because it's a pasteurized product, but it's giving you an essence of something that is really important to the French. So Brie Savarin, which is another triple cream cheese, is named after a famous gourmand in France. He was a little long-winded in his writing, but he was spot on in terms of his palate. And one of the things that Brie Savarin really loved was sparkling wine. Now, all of us here think of the only sparkling wine available in France as champagne, and that's not exactly true. So this is a Cremant. A Cremant is actually a sparkling wine from another province in France other than Champagne, and it is made in the same way that Champagne is made. So they vinify the wine exactly the way that they would vinify the wine in Champagne, and then they do the same bottle technique to create the bubbles. You can see here, I don't know if you can see, oh yeah, you can see the bubbles. They're really, really teeny tiny, and they have a very steady stream. And that's because the winemaker in this case, which is Domaine Rouault, and Roulet, Père et Fille, they have actually put this wine in bottle for 24 months on the lees. What that means is that it's basically had enough time in bottle to integrate the CO2 that's been created and really get that integrated into the wine. And that, when it's released, first of all, it's really fizzy, but it also kind of simmers down and it creates a very steady stream of teeny, teeny, tiny bubbles, which is exactly what you want out of a well-made sparkling wine. The wines that you get that are less expensive and less well-made, like Prosecco, and a lot of times Cava these days, they actually inject CO2 into the wine instead of letting it be created in a natural fashion. So that's why Cremants, this one's only about $25, $30, are great options for people who cannot or don't want to spend the type of money on champagne for a celebration or even for weekly consumption, but they still want a really, really well-made wine. Cremant de Jura, Jura meaning the Northern Rhone, the Jura Mountains. This is actually really well influenced by Champagne in terms of the varietals that are used. So in Champagne, you use basically 3 different kinds of grapes to make it: Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. This one actually has 2 of those grapes. It has Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So it has, let's see here, 57% Chardonnay and then 11% Pinot Noir. It's also made up of some native grapes to the Jura, which are Savigny and Poulsard. So Savigny is actually makes a wine that is actually made a lot like sherry, and it brings really beautiful kind of nuttiness, dried pear, like a rose candy, fennel. So it has some of these really kind of cool, interesting aromas and flavors that you would not typically get off of a champagne. Chardonnay brings a lot of acid, it brings good green apple flavor to the wine, and then it brings structure. And then Pinot Noir adds body, and then it adds a fruitiness to it. And then the Poulsard actually backs up that fruitiness because it's also a red skin grape, but a really light one. And so that actually brings in some more red berries to the wine, adds a little structure, maybe a little bit of baking spice to it, because this wine is actually not put in barrel at all. It's all stainless steel. The producer, Domaine Rouet, is actually fairly new. It's started in 1942 by Desiree Rollet, and in the 50s, his sons took over, and now his grandsons are actually part of the family business, and his great grandsons, I believe. So it's kind of a cool family business, pretty small. They actually have transitioned to organic farming, so they do not have organic certification. A lot of producers, both in cheese land and in wine land, may be farming organically, but they don't have the money to, or the time really, to dedicate to getting a certification. So you often will see wines that are not certified organic, but are actually, they are organic wines, and this is one of them. Especially so since they are using indigenous yeasts in the fermentation, which is extraordinarily hard. Native yeasts, they are really good at starting a fermentation. They're really difficult to finish a fermentation, so it often takes a long time. So these folks have really, really paid attention, and they're doing a good thing. And again, you're getting a really well-made wine for not that much money. So Domaine Roulet, Père et Fille Crémant de Jura. I hope you all have decided to do a little sparkling wine with me. Tell me what you're drinking tonight. I would love to know. All right, perfect. Somebody's doing a cava made from Pinot Noir. Very common nowadays to have cavas made out of Pinot Noir. Seems to be kind of a trend in Spain. That's cool. Love cava. All right, so a little cheersies again. Moving on to the next cheese, which is Brie Rousse d'Argental. Now, this is a really great introduction to sheep's milk. Again, this is a Fromy cheese. In this case, it is made by Fromagerie Guyotot, and they are actually more well known for a cheese that you've probably come across maybe more than a time or two, called Fromage d'Avinois. Fromage d'Avinois is one of the first cheeses that I had the pleasure of working with when I was a cheesemonger in San Clemente, and it is, talk about eating a stick of butter. That's exactly what it tastes like. Oh, great. So Carrie is doing a Crémant de Loire. So again, that's actually, Crémant de Loire is actually probably made using Chenin Blanc, which is a fabulous wine, a fabulous grape to use in sparkling. There's actually a couple of different Loire Valley sparklers made out of Chenin Blanc and Crémant de Loire, or it could also be made out of Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir is grown in the Loire Valley. Very, very great. And then somebody is doing a Blanquette de Limoux. Perfect. I love that. And then Sancerre as well. So great. So we've got a couple of different things. Sancerre is a great option for cheese. It's one of the most classic pairings with any kind of cheese you can do. Sauvignon Blanc straight down the road. Like Sauvignon Blanc and then Pinot Noir are, if you are at like your wit's end in terms of what wine to serve with a meal, with a cheese board, just do Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Noir. They will 100% go every single time. All right. Ooh, and we have a boozy. Somebody's drinking boozy. I love boozy. Okay. Boozy is boozy. Hey. All right. So Prévus d'Argental. When you opened up your packages today, I bet you were a little bit alarmed by the color of the rind. Am I right? Yay or nay on that? And you were probably also really surprised by the color of the rind, that it wasn't a stinky cheese. There's a good reason for that. This is actually not a washed rind cheese at all. This is actually a cheese that is made with the original food dye, annatto. So annatto is actually a dye that is made from the seeds of a South American tree. And there's a whole history of the use of this particular dye. Like I said, it was the first one used when industrial cheesemaking came into being, really at the turn of the 20th century. Now, imagine yourself in Europe, and you have always ever had cheese made of milk of animals who have been eating grass, and especially with cows, that means that your cheese has always been a particular shade of like deep yellow to almost orange. Sorry, I had to eat. Now, World War I happens, and there's a shortage of food. And one of the things that was done right after World War I was industrial production of milk started in Europe. What happened then was you had cows, instead of being fed grass, which would color the milk like a yellow color, which would then color the cheese an even darker color, you're feeding those cows grains instead of grass. Therefore, you strip that milk away from the carotene, and so you don't have that color anymore. Now, you are in a market and you're a common person and you have only ever had cheese of a certain color, and you know that that cheese is good because that color of that cheese has always been that beautiful color. And now you're getting cheese that's not that color at all. It's kind of like a cream color. And so you stop buying cheese. That's a big problem. So industrial producers got annatto and started using annatto to dye the cheeses orange. And that fixed the problem in terms of consumer heads. So this is actually the precursor to our industrial, like red number 70 and blue, blah, blah, blah. It's a natural product, so it does not influence the flavor of the cheese at all. It actually just adds color into it. And this really is made from annatto. So you're actually getting, this is a natural food dye. This is not chemical at all. So Brie Bruce, the whole point of this cheese was to introduce people to sheep's milk cheese. And that kind of goes along with the whole idea of why Fromy exists. So Fromy is actually originally from Alsace. They're actually still located in their hometown in Alsace. They have more of a headquarters in Strasbourg, but their head offices, their home offices, are actually still in this little tiny town in Alsace where they started. Alsace, for anybody who has not been there, is a really interesting part of France because it actually has kind of bounced between France and Germany and France and Germany and France and Germany kind of several times over the past, say 400 years. The current border of Alsace was actually put into place solidly at the end of World War II, and it has not changed. However, on both sides of the border, you actually have kind of this confluence of cultures between French culture and German culture. And so when you're going into Alsace, a lot of people will speak French, but they'll speak French with like a German twang. And then on the German side, same thing. The food is very similar on both sides of the border. The architecture is very similar on both sides of the border. Now, this guy, Xavier David, started Fromy to basically take raw milk cheeses from France and import them over the border, export them over the border into Germany, and introduce French cheese to the German market. That whole idea of introducing French cheese to an international community has actually expanded from there. And now they have 150 employees and they work in about 50 different countries. What they've done over the past, they were founded in 1969. So over the past basically almost 50 years, they have basically created a whole line of cheeses under their own auspices, under their own name, where they work with small producers to make them, but they make them in a little bit, more sanitized. So what they will do is they'll make it specifically for a certain market in order to appeal to the folks who are there. And once those people fall in love with those cheeses, then it's like your gateway cheese. It's your gateway drug. It's your great, you need to have an easy to love introduction in order to fall in love with more intense flavors down the line. That's exactly what they do. So they have their own line of cheeses under the Fromy label. Then they also export cheeses that are very, very traditional. So you get the Papillon Black Roquefort, that is actually exported by Fromy. So they kind of do a little bit of both. And again, it's right from the very beginning. The Dargental line of cheeses, there's a cow's milk, there's a sheep's milk, there's a goat's milk. All three of them, they started in 1985. And so this is a situation where they're just kind of doing your gateway drug, your gateway sheep's milk cheese in a really fun, easy to love format. And boy, do they nail it. I mean, I'm a cheesemonger and I love some really intense, funky cheeses, but this is actually really delightful, especially with the cherries that were in tonight's box. Okay. I hope everybody's enjoying that one as much as I am. Again, like you can kind of play around with the flavors, spread it on some bread. It's perfect cheese for spreading on bread, on warm baguette, because it's got like a yeastiness to it. It's really nice. You get a little bit more of a savory quality in the Brie Russe than you did with the Delice, for good reason, because sheep's milk cheese will do that. It's also richer. You would think that it wouldn't be as rich as the Delice, but it's on the same level as the Delice, and that's because sheep's milk cheese actually has a higher sheep's milk has a higher fat content to start with than cow's milk. So it's a lot of people say that it's the most ideal milk to use to produce cheese. I would agree with that. I love sheep's milk cheeses. It's a great one. Okay. Moving on to our last cheese, Leonora. I have loved this cheese since I first tasted it. And it's a really great example of a soft goat's milk cheese from Spain. You can kind of see with the pieces by the way, kudos to Scott for providing us really beautiful pieces of cheese tonight. These are all like 100% perfectly right. So this is one of those cheeses where you can see literally the layers of how a goat cheese ripens, a soft goat cheese ripens from the outside in. You have that beautiful rind, and then you have that gorgeous, really super silky cream layer. Sorry, I'll lift that up. Cream layer right underneath the rind, and then you have that super velvety interior of the cheese. And Again, this one is in such a great condition because it's actually, when it's younger, it's going to be super velvety in the middle. And this one has had time to fully ripen. And so it's actually super silky smooth. So you still get a little bit of the velvet, but it's a lot softer, a little less aggressive. And then it's super lemony. I'm having a little bit more of my croissant because I really like this. All right. So Leonora is from Castilla y León in Spain. It's from a tiny little town. Again, 3,000 people in this town in León, where Oscar Fernando Marcos Gonzalez lives. He actually grew up there. And it's a part of Spain, and I'm going to show you the part of Spain where it's from. And part of the reason why this cheese came to be, and it is because mining has been and still remains a huge part of the economy. As you can see there, that was an old Roman gold mine, and the hills and mountains in this region have a bunch of these mines all over the place. And you can see how it's changed the landscape. I'm going to show you what a modern coal mine in this is literally about 20 miles away from the town in Leon where Leonora is from. It really has changed the landscape that's there. There's not a lot other than the mining community in terms of an economy in this part of Spain. And so Oscar actually ended up becoming a mechanic first. And he was not a very good mechanic. It's not exactly the thing that he wanted to do. And he definitely didn't want to become a miner. And so he kind of jumped at the chance when the Spanish government started providing free classes in different kind of craftsmanship. And so they actually offered him an opportunity to learn cheesemaking. And I'm going to show you Oscar now because he's adorable. There's Oscar right there. He is the creator, obviously, of Leonora. And it's now he and his wife. And they have a couple of people who work in the cheese production facility. And they actually have their own herd of goats. These are the Alpina goats. And then they also have these guys as well, Murcianas. So Murcianas are actually goats that are native to this part of Spain. And then the Alpinas are actually not originally from Spain at all. They're actually originally from Switzerland, but they've been imported into Spain and they've started to integrate into the Spanish herds there. And so they are now part of his herd. He also has a bunch of neighbors who are goat farmers. And so he uses his own milk from his own herd, and then he uses the milk of his neighbors to make Leonora. How Leonora got from this tiny little town in Spain to us is a whole other story. So Michelle, who is the owner and founder of the import company Forever Cheese, they specialize in Spanish cheese. A lot of what we get in the United States in terms of fine Spanish cheese comes from them. They are also the people who represent Mítica, which is a family-run business that they do have cheeses under the Mítica brand, but they also have mostly accompaniments to cheese. So they make membrillo, they make a bunch of different kinds of fruit paste, they make these amazing figs that are dipped in chocolate that are awesome. I used to bring them home. My sister can attest on the chat how good they are. So they actually represent a bunch of different Spanish products. And Michelle was at a cheese fair in Spain about 20 years ago, and they were just finishing up, and she was kind of chatting with a couple of the producers that she had been trying cheese with, and she looks over and she sees this brick-shaped cheese in a cooler. And she said, I want to try that. And they said, well, the producer's already gone. And she's like, no, but I really want to try that. So she tried the cheese and she fell in love with it. And she said, how do I get a hold of this person? How do I get in touch with the producer? I want to bring this cheese to America. And one of the guys who was still there gave her Oscar's number, and she called him while he was driving his truck back from Madrid, which is about an hour and a half away. And he said, I'm driving right now. Can I call you back? And she said, yes, but I want that cheese. And so basically, she worked with him to tweak the recipe a little bit because the type of mold that he was using on the cheeses did not transport well across the Atlantic. It kind of turned gray, which is not the look that we want to go for here. But he basically, in terms of how he got to the place of producing this gorgeous cheese, was a whole journey. Again, he started as a mechanic. He didn't really love that. It wasn't his thing. He learned cheese making at this government school, and then he started traveling. And so he went to France, and he went to different parts of Europe, and he learned their cheese making traditions. And then he came back home, and he learned from Grandma and her friends in terms of their cheese making traditions. And so what he did was he started making traditional cheeses from this particular region. One of them is called like the leg of the donkey, right? That's literally how they name the cheese, because it's like a little puck, and it kind of looks like the leg of a donkey. And so he said, he started with that cheese, and then he basically transitioned, and he applied everything that he had learned over the years and created a different cheese. And he took inspiration from the area that he is from. So he basically decided he wanted to make a lingot-shaped cheese, which is why you got a square today. And a lingot, obviously, we call it a lingot because we refer to a gold lingot. But in Spain, it's actually inspired by the bricks that are used, the adobe bricks that are used to build the houses in his hometown. And so he was inspired by the bricks of his hometown to produce the brick of cheese that he created. And so that is why Leonora has that shape. Leonora is obviously named after Leon, Spain. And then he actually has taken that whole concept of being of a specific place to the name of his dairy. So his dairy is Quesos Facendera. So Facendera is actually a term that now translates to work for the benefit of the society as a whole. It's a whole concept that he bases his business off of. It is not how that particular term started. The term actually started in the Middle Ages, and it was basically when a farmer used a certain amount of time in his year. So it could be several weeks, it could be a whole month, to do work for the Lord, for the count or whoever was in that castle on the hill above him. And it was basically used for taxes. So they used labor as a way of paying taxes to the Lord. And the work that was done ended up being for the benefit of the community as a whole. So it wasn't working for the Lord in terms of their own fields and vineyards and things like that. It was actually for building roads or repairing aqueducts or mending walls or things like that. So the work that was done was ended up being for the benefit of the whole community in the end, even though it was really kind of a tithe situation. That idea has transformed in modern times into facendera. So basically, he uses the production of Leonora and exporting that cheese to us here in the States for us to enjoy as a way for him to benefit his community. And of course, we talked about him purchasing milk from his neighbors in order to make up what he needs to be able to provide us enough cheese for what we enjoy, but he actually has incorporated that idea into other facets of the business. So on the cheese, if you look at the rind, you actually see like these little striations, and I'm going to pull this up here so that you can see the striations. So those are actually marks from what were originally, in terms of cheese making, grass mats. And we don't use grass anymore. The USDA won't allow us to use grass anymore for obvious reasons. So what they do is they actually have turned the grass into plastic straw. And so what he does is that folks who are mentally challenged in the community, those are the folks who are making the mats to create the cheese. So he's actually creating a system, an economic system for people who cannot hold down typical jobs. So they make those mats that cover the cheese. And then he's also really dedicated to teaching people in his community and in his region about traditional foodways. And so he actually teaches classes for local folks to learn cheese making so that they can carry on the traditions that their forefathers had for literally millennia. So that is Leonora. And I think that's pretty much all I have for you today in terms of information. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do you guys have any questions at all? Please put it in the chat. I'd love to be able to answer any questions that you might have. I'm having a cherry while I do that. And maybe a little bit more wine. Yes? No? Any questions? Have you guys enjoyed it? I hope so. I'm going to put up a little poll for you. First of all, I want to know what your favorite cheese of the night was. Tell me which one you loved the most. You can, again, if you're on the website, you can respond to the poll that I just put up. What was your favorite cheese of the evening? The Delice Malcire, the Brie Russe, or the Leonora? Ooh, Delice has one vote. All right, we've got a few more. No? Leonora? All right. Cool. We've got a few people who have let us know. And then the next question is, what would you like to see in future happy hours? Would you like to see the actual wine pairings put into the boxes? Would you like to see additional accompaniments? Okay, you want to see more tips on how to build boards? Okay, great. Did you guys get out and do some creative things with your boards this time? I would love to see that. I know that we probably have a few people who are new to tonight, but would love to be able to see what you guys did in terms of creativity with your boards. And then the last one that I'm putting up there is, would you like to do some in-person events once it's safer to do so? Or do you like the live streams, or maybe a combination of the two? We can work on some different concepts, but I definitely wanted to kind of gauge what you guys want to do for future events. We have some great cheese happy hours coming up. The next one is going to be later on in April on the 20th, and that one is going to be called Goat Over It. So those of you who are maybe a little timid about goat cheese, or maybe want to explore goat cheese a little bit more, we're going to explore some goat cheeses the next time that are really, really fun and delicious. And then the one following that is going to be in May, and that one is about ancient cheeses. So things that, maybe Julius Caesar liked. And yes, we do have cheeses today that were around in maybe not the form that we have today, but in an original form. back when Julius Caesar was around. And so I hope you have enjoyed Cheese Happy Hour tonight. I pray that you come back for another one. And please do send me questions through the website if you haven't been able to send them to me before. I would love to also hear your feedback. My email is kevans@cheesetothepeople.com. And please feel free to explore the website. I've been working really hard on doing these cheese happy hours, but there are some really great write-ups on the website, and then there's cheese profiles that I have worked hard on creating a totally new and hopefully innovative way of showing you information about cheese. Please check it out, and please let me know what you think. And I thank Scott for another beautiful box this week, and we will see you again on April 20th. We'll have the box up probably the week before. So, but we'll work on getting those boxes up maybe a smidge earlier the next time. So thank you again. And I really, really appreciate your time. And I hope you enjoyed tonight. Take care. Bye-bye.